This year's winner of the Herblock Prize is Jim Morin, who is of a sufficient stature to be able to carry it, and he's the editorial cartoonist for the Miami Herald. After two relatively brief stints as a cartoonist for the Beaumont Enterprise and Journal in Texas and the Richmond Times-Dispatch, where he had a chance to work with the late Jeff McNally, Morin was hired by the Miami Herald in 1978, where he has been ever since. In 1983, Morin shared the Pulitzer Prize with other members of the Herald's editorial board, and in 1996, he won the Pulitzer outright for his editorial cartoons. Other cartooning prizes include the John Fischetti Award, the Thomas Nast Award, the John Berryman Award, and the National Cartoonist Society Award. In choosing Morin for this year's Herblock Prize, the contest judges praised his work for having the same sense of purpose and timeliness that marked Herblock's cartoons. They cited the strength of his caricature and the consistently strong message of his cartoons. And like Herblock, they said, Morin relentlessly goes after issues he really cares about. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Jim Morin. You thought I was kidding, didn't you? There we go. Good. There it is. And also,
that's great.
That's the good part. You want me to put this back down?
That's a beautiful pen tip. Well, thank you very, very much, Frank, and all the members of the Herblock Foundation Board, and my colleagues that are here tonight, and my old friends and family, and my new friends, which means everybody else. I'm going to start out by telling you the lot of a political cartoonist working in the business these days. Before coming into this room, or walking down the hallway, Jeff Danziger, last year's deserved winner, asked me if I had a speech. And I said yes. And he said, "Are there any jokes in it?" It's just like our cartoons. Why can't you be funny? Well, look around you. What can I tell you? When Frank initially informed me that I'd won this award, I told him that it was a single honor that meant more to me than any of the other prizes that I entered. And this had nothing to do with the monetary gift, although I do have two kids in college, and it helps a little bit. And it had nothing to do with this splendid evening that they've planned for us. No cartoonist taught me more about what goes into making a good political cartoon than Herblock. There is a concoction of disciplines that goes into creating these things that is totally unique to the profession of journalism. And unfortunately, I hate to say that it is increasingly an endangered art form, but we're working to educate editors as to how readers love them more than any single element of the editorial pages. And we hope to stop losing jobs and hopefully get some more people hired, especially young people coming into the profession. I lived in Washington, D.C. for a while. I was actually born here, but I lived here for about a year, and I had the opportunity to see Herb's work on a daily basis in the Post. Before that, I used to see him in the Boston Globe when I was growing up. And to see his work, or any other cartoonist's work, every single day is different. And what blew me away about Herb's work was it was like a pile driver. It was bam, 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 steady and relentless. daily broadsides against liars, thieves, demagogues, egomaniacs, charlatans, and thugs in public office. And this is why my mom said to me, "What a great way to make a living." Herb Bloch's work wasn't often funny, and what I loved about him was he didn't care. He cared only about getting his point across clearly and concisely, even if he had to utilize 100 different labels. Herb's unflagging passion for humanity, justice, and truth was and still should be an inspiration for anyone thinking of seriously pursuing this art form. And that is part of what goes into making a good editorial cartoon. But one aspect of Herb's work, which I totally appreciate now and appreciated back then, and it's not often discussed, is his drawing. Now, the editorial cartoon is comprised of two essential parts: a well-thought-out opinion and a powerfully rendered drawing to communicate that opinion forcefully. Herb's drawings, to start with, were beautifully composed. Most cartoonists you see now, myself included, generally draw in a horizontal space. And this all of us can read easily because we're used to reading from left to right. But Herb's work, of course, is that radical vertical space, which is a much harder space to compose for. But Herb did it beautifully. Now, he could have, for example, in a drawing, he could have a Capitol dome up in the left-hand corner, and then he could have 5 or 6 shadowy figures scurrying across away from the Capitol, each of them carrying bags full of ill-gotten money. Each bag has a label on it telling you what it is, and they're scurrying across, and then there's the hapless victim that's down on the ground with a terrified look on her face, and then down at the bottom of the cartoon is Jane and John Q. Public watching these proceedings and making an acerbic remark commenting on them. Now, that is a lot to put into a cartoon, but it is because of Herb's draftsmanship that it didn't look complicated, and it read quickly, and you got the point instantly. And that is testament to the fact that this guy really knew how to draw. He really knew how to construct a picture. The other part of his cartoons that I really appreciate was his caricatures. I don't think he's been given the due that he's really deserved over the years as a great, great caricaturist. The test of a good caricature is when the drawing of the person looks more like the person than the person himself or herself. There's a great cartoonist in Britain named Trog, a great caricaturist too, and the way he put it was, if you feel them looking back at you, you know you're all right. Herb's caricatures look back at you, and they did so consistently. My favorites, of course, are his renderings of Joe McCarthy and Tricky Dick Nixon, who both looked back at you and gave you chills when you were reading your morning newspaper. He stripped the veneer off of these public figures and laid bare their deceit and vanity for all to see. And there's no better result of a cartoon than to accomplish this. The most valuable lesson I learned from Herb goes beyond the nuts and bolts of political cartooning. And this is where I think we're establishing kind of a tradition here that everybody has to tell their Herb Bloch story. Here it is. In 1977, Herb Bloch was given the 4th Estate Award by the National Press Club. And at the time, I was an editorial cartoonist for the Richmond Times-Dispatch, less than a full year into my professional career. I was very, very green at the time. The cream of the political cartooning crop was all invited. And they had asked for all of us to do a drawing for and about Herb, all to be displayed at the dinner. Somehow, amongst the hoi polloi of editorial cartooning, I somehow was invited. And I was, to put it mildly, totally and completely and absolutely petrified. It did my confidence no good when, entering the hall, I saw a huge star of cartooning whose work I'd admired for many, many, many years, and I approached him and introduced myself, and he said, "What are you doing here?" So we go in, and there's a reception line. At the end of the reception line, Herb was greeting guests one by one, and I was literally shaking by this time. As I slowly made my way to the line, eventually I was introduced to him. And when I was, Herb's face lit up. And he extended his hand, shook my hand, and praised my drawing up and down, and said how thrilled he was to have it. And the drawing I've seen since is embarrassingly amateurish, but at the time, he was just absolutely excited of getting it. And he just put me immediately at ease. To Herb, I wasn't a novice cartoonist out of my league in front of an authentic cartooning legend. I was simply a fellow cartoonist practicing the same craft, facing the same daily dilemmas of drawing an editorial cartoon. It hit me that Herb Bloch not only drew cartoons sticking up for the little guy, he was that little guy, and had he not realized that fact, he would not have been able to draw those cartoons. Learning that simple lesson early in my career, a lesson that Herb had taught me through example, was an invaluable gift. And that is what makes this evening's celebration of this great and very humble artist's work and its enduring legacy and inspiration to all who practice this craft so special. And it's also, in a way, payback for me to Herb for praising my work, that I can stand before you and praise his. And that is why I'm so thrilled and honored to win this prize. Now, as a personal note, when I talked to Frank, Frank surreptitiously interviewed me, as a good reporter does. You don't know you're being interviewed, but I relate a story about how I actually got, how it occurred to me to do this, how to pursue political cartooning, and I told him this true story about my mom saying, "Why don't you do what Herb Bloch do? It's a great way to make a living." And I did. And at any rate, she's very ill in the hospital. And so for me, this particular award is really, for me personally, is dedicated to her. Because if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be doing this, not only because she recommended that I try this out as a profession, but also she has just been totally supportive every single step in the way, which is pretty amazing considering that both of my parents are loyal Republicans.